I'm off to college. You know, while it's true that Leland is only a mere 30 miles away, as I leave here today, I feel as though I'm pulling up anchor. You know, casting off, setting sail into a vast sea of knowledge and wisdom. One man, the captain of his own ship.
Don't forget your lunch.
Extra cookies?
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what are we talking about today?
Well, this week we're going away to college.
We are heading to college. We have another very special guest here to discuss this trope with us. Now, this guest is from one of my favorite podcasts, Good Times, Great Movies, Doug McCambridge. Hello.
Hello.
Now, when we were discussing tropes, I was trying to gear things towards your podcast, Good Times, Great Movies, in which you talk about movies from the 80s.
Sure.
It's a sort of straightforward thing, just like this, a man and a woman having a discussion about a pop culture thing. And then you brought it to my attention that, not unlike Amy, you are a podcaster by night, educator by day. So explain why we're talking about college sitcoms.
This is going to sound, Jay, you might not love this answer. You originally pitched something and I was like, I do not want to watch most of these things.
Oh, sure.
And I thought, I do guest on podcasts because I'm a college professor. My summers are pretty much open. I went on a show called VH-Us, where the host brings on guests and discusses a film that has to do with their career. Mm-hmm. And I kind of thought, there's enough college tropes and enough college episodes out there where we could even do something like that. What I will say, we haven't gotten into these episodes yet. I kind of regret pitching the Hogan family because we're one episode away from the same trope four times. And I was like, oh man, I had no idea there were so many of these similar, I want this professor to be my mentor and I'm going to give them a hard time or the class is too difficult. I did not remember any of these episodes from these shows that we saw, but I guarantee you, I probably saw all of them before.
Oh, sure. And it's not uncommon for us as we assemble these little four-piece meals, if you will, of sitcoms that we have a situation like this where we have three that really gel and then one outlier. But that'll be fun, too. What I'm thinking is we've got, just like you said, 3 out of our 4 shows are going to be all about professors. And so I'm thinking that when we get to those, we can weave a conversational tapestry, if you will, where we can sort of find all about your philosophies and experiences as a professor and how they may differ from these sitcom characters. But what all 4 of these shows have in common is they're all about someone starting college as a freshman. And that's an experience that we've all had. So I thought really quickly, let's start with that. Doug, in a nutshell, being a freshman in college, going off to school, what was that like for you?
This could be through rose-tinted glasses. It was a pretty easy transition for me, and it was a welcome change. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. I kind of always felt like I really didn't belong there. The high school parking lot was basically just a bunch of pickup trucks with probably gun racks. I'm not sure. And then my crappy little 86 Nissan Sentra. And then when I went to college, and I went to college for art, the way the school was set up is they would kind of put similar people in similar dorms. Mm-hmm. So because I was an art student, I was put in the freak dorm. And like these people had piercings all over and tattoos, and it was just punk music. And I was like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. Like, I really, college was amazing, incredible. If I could go, well, I guess I do get to go back every day. But
You are
feels very different.
And you went away to college geographically?
I did.
Yes, okay. That's something we're going to talk about in all of our sitcoms. People love to stay in those hometowns.
I mean, I wonder why.
All right, so Amy, what was your college freshman year deal? Positive overall, difficult transition?
I think it was positive overall. I had, and probably we'll get into it at another time when we do the roommates trope. So Florida has this thing where you have to do 9 credits in the summer at some point throughout your 4 years. So they want to keep the professors employed and busy. So I went I graduated and then like a week later was in college. And so I had a roommate that summer who was just totally different from me. And so that summer was rough because of that very different and challenging dynamic. She was a stranger. She was from Ohio, I think, and I was from Florida, and she was there to party, and so was I, but not in the same way that she was. So that was tough. But in terms of like the classes and all that, it was fine. I had a great time. I enjoyed college.
Yeah, I will say really briefly, I was kind of miserable my freshman year of college. I went to SUNY Binghamton, but I went there for film studies, and the film program was this like super intense avant-garde experimental thing where like you would walk in on the first day of school and they would be like playing a phonograph backwards and melting a candle on it while showing you 8mm footage of a deer bleeding to death. And like, nobody told you when you were like going on your freshman tour, this was what it was going to be. And I'm kind of resentful to this day that I didn't really like learn any of the skills I went there to learn. It's hilarious to me that in one of our sitcoms, Western philosophy is going to be the go-to example of a difficult class, because I ended up basically double majoring in philosophy by accident because they just had like
better classes.
I took a lot of those classes because I thought they were cool. And then I found out like, oh, as a double major, you only need so and such amount of credits. But yeah, I don't know. Looking back on it,
I accidentally majored in philosophy.
It probably wasn't so bad, but I remember being very angsty and just feeling like it was kind of a waste. And I will say, being, a freelance creative professional, besides whatever life experience of having that intermediate thing between teenage years and adulthood, I don't think I really learned a lot skill-wise that I use on a day-to-day basis. So I guess I'm pretty skeptical about college in general. Yes, not to cast aspersions.
No, I get it. And this is something that I am learning more now as a professor, is how few students end up working in their field of study.
Yeah.
Like I went there for graphic design. That was my first job. That was my day job. It's currently what I teach now. That's really what I experienced.
Yeah.
And seeing it not happen for a great number of people is kind of sad. What I don't want to downplay is the social aspect of college. Like that, as you kind of said, Jay, just like interacting and socializing with people, and you're just trapped in a giant dorm with people that are your age, and you're going to parties and you're doing all sorts of stuff, good or bad, that you didn't do before, and just the experimentation, like that was great, and I wouldn't trade that.
Yeah, it's basically like training wheels of adulthood. You're away from your parents, you're living in this different space, but you're still kind of rounded up with a bunch of other people your age. Someone's keeping an eye on you. Your room and board is usually paid for. There's there's these sort of guardrails against.
It's the opposite of the stepped down care in those retirement communities where you go in and you could be in independent living and then assisted living and then nursing care. This is the exit from the nursery, right? You've got nursery and then you've got living with your parents, and then you've got college where you're kind of experimenting like a halfway house, and then you're out and you're free and you can fuck it up all you want.
All right. Well, so let's get into the hijinks here of our freshman year characters. Amy, what is our lineup?
This week, we are watching The Hogan Family, Season 4, Episode 1, Animal House, Family Ties, Season 3, Episode 3, Little Man on Campus, Saved by the Bell, The College Years, Season 1, Episode 3, Zack Lies and Videotape, and finally, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, All Guts and No Glory, Season 4, Episode 3.
So yeah, it's true that the Hogan family is an outlier in this lineup in terms of the way the story fits in, but frankly, we've been dying to talk about it. We haven't covered the Hogan family yet.
Got baby Jason Bateman. You can't go wrong. We've got Jason and Justine in this lineup.
Yeah. Now, I was always aware of this, of course. It was floating around in syndication, and I definitely caught it here and there when I was a kid, but I was not a big fan. This is, of course, one of the major historic shakeups in sitcom history.
So Valerie, famous as being Rhoda on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, got her own show, Rhoda, and then when that ended, they were like, all right, well, what starring vehicle is next for you? And it became this show. And it was originally just called Valerie. Mm-hmm. And then after season 2, she and her husband, who I guess was like a producer.
And is there any hook to this show other than it's a family and she's a lady?
The husband is an airline pilot who is
husband
absent.
Who looks like MacGyver.
Yes. And he is absent. So it's basically she's like a single mom, even though she's not. And that's the show. And Valerie Harper is this very recognizable, famous actress. So starring vehicle, here we go. And at the end of season 2, she and her husband, who I guess was like a producer or something on the show, not Miller Boyette, who were like the major producers, but they got into a contract dispute and they wanted more money, like per episode raises. Also, at the end, is because it had been kind of a low-rated show, and at the end of season 2, they moved it to Monday night after Alf, so it was getting better ratings. So they were like, ratings are better, we want more money, and NBC was basically like, no, and they walked out. They staged a walkout. And so season 3 started and there wasn't a Valerie. So they explained it and they were just like, whatever. They had already had Sandy Duncan in the pipeline. And she is you know her from Broadway. She was Peter Pan. Yeah, that's what she's famous for. So they had her, she had signed a contract with NBC to do shows, to put together a starring vehicle for her. And so they were like, we don't have to write something new. This one's out. This one's in. The joke around the network was that they were calling it Throw Mama from Her Show. Because it was like around that same time.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you can fill us in on what happened to the actual mom on the show, right?
It's not very exciting. She just died in a car accident. But that's so sad. Like, there are 3 shows. I was even really trying to think in my head, and I'm sure there are more, but there are 3 shows that I distinctly remember watching the first episode and the last, like going all the way through. And it's Newhart. For some reason, I watched all of Newhart. I watched all of Growing Pains. I'm so sad. We have me back for Growing Pains. We'll just do 4 Growing Pains. I'll love it.
Love it.
And the Hogan Family. Those are the 3 shows. I did not miss them. I love those shows so much. I didn't, as a kid, I didn't know who Valerie Harper was.
Sure.
To me, she was certainly the focal point of the show. Like, that's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
Is that first season, she is the show.
Right.
I mean, the kids are there and they're fine, but it's her vehicle. And then for this giant shakeup to happen, and in my opinion as a child, didn't miss a beat. I'm totally fine with Sandy Duncan. When Jason Bateman started doing all the heavy lifting on the show, I was all in. Like, as a kid, I wanted to be Jason Bateman. Like, that was it.
All right,
He was my hero. This is amazing.
That's what I'm sort of hypothesizing here, is that even if it started as being a vehicle for Valerie, was it Jason Bateman or anyone else that it sort of captured the public's imagination, that they were like, now we're confident we can keep this going without her?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Jason Bateman was coming of age at the time, and they realized they had like a heartthrob on set. And I think they put a lot of faith, and I'm not going to say they were wrong, in Sandy Duncan just sliding right in and, you know, taking up the motherly role, even though she's their aunt. And just, like, it's just so strange. And I think the other thing is it worked out so perfectly that the husband was a pilot, where they're like, no, we'll just bring somebody else in. Like, he can't carry this show.
Yeah, he's clearly not here.
He's just a soap opera. He's just a soap opera actor who shows up and delivers 4 or 5 lines an episode and then is gone. Right. And I always found that dynamic amazing too. You know, I enjoyed having my dad around, but I was like, what if there were no dads around? Like, how
what if
fun
it's just
would that
my crazy aunt who's a guidance counselor?
Right, yes.
Yeah, I remember. So I was a fan of the show as well. Jason Bateman is a heartthrob to me for sure. Was like right on board with that train. And
is there anyone, sorry to interrupt, I'm just wondering, is there anyone in the public eye that you could really carry that through from 80s till present day?
Well, he took a long time off.
But still in the public eye, still super sexy. Everybody loves him. Like, talk about like legs. That guy.
Yeah,
really
I mean, Robert Downey Jr., he's like right in the same space. True. Yeah.
But having such a high profile as a teenager, and now still probably beyond that level now in his 50s, I guess. Yeah. You know, it's pretty astounding because, Jay, like you said, I can't think of anyone else. Like even, and not to get too far ahead, like I know that Tiffany Amber Thiessen still does stuff. Like my kids watch a show with her in it now.
But yeah, she's not to that level. Of magazines at the airport.
Exactly.
Like Bateman is.
Yeah, they're not showing her at Rangers games or whatever.
Right.
Like, you know.
Yeah. So I remember when this changeover happened, and this is probably like I watched Family Ties, so I remember when they brought the kid on. Like, you know, and same with Growing Pains, but this was like their mom died, and this was like a really big emotional event, and so the person they bring in to come and care for them, oh, she's a guidance counselor. Of course. That's so perfect. She can help them, and she's their aunt. And so it's just perfectly natural, and it's going to be okay. And I remember being, as a kid, like nervous for the show to come back, because I liked the show, and being like, oh, it's going to be different. It's probably not going to be good anymore. It's sad. I hope it doesn't get canceled. You know, I'm little, but I just remember thinking these things, and then liking it, and then being like, oh, no, I like this. And then, of course, being the Broadway kid and loving Sandy Duncan and just Broadway people in general, I'm like, oh, she's good. Is she going to dance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen the Valerie episodes, honestly. Like I said, I caught this here and there, like after Charles in Charge or something. And so, yeah, this episode, this is a season premiere, right?
Yeah, we're a year out, right? So Mom dies at the end of season 2, beginning of season 3, and now this is beginning of season 4. So everybody's healed. We're all good. We're not even mentioning Mom anymore.
This is a whole year ago. Get over it.
You're fine. No, you have no fallout from this trauma.
In sitcom time. We've got some definite overlapping tropes here, because Steele, the mascot of the neighboring team.
Didn't we get a Charles in Charge episode where they stole a mascot? I feel like that was the thing I saw there. I think
that was the thing. We definitely have a Saved by the Bell episode. There's a famous Saved by the Bell episode where where Screech as the tiger, I think, gets kidnapped, and they kidnap like a live animal, and Valley High,
because Valley rules.
Valley
remember?
High's Stinky, and he has also relationship with Mr. Belding. And of course, The Simpsons, the Lemon Tree episode, you know, that's the other big one for me, is The Simpsons stealing the Shelbyville lemon tree. So, that's going to be what these guys are doing for the other overlapping trope, which is the general thing of we're new in school, we need to be popular, right? We need to make a splash.
Yes.
But there is some truth to that. I think it's much harder for commuters to blend in if you're not on campus. So I kind of get it. You know, he and both of his two dumb friends aren't living on campus.
So are these guys, are they pledging a frat, or are they just trying to make a splash?
No, they're just trying to find a way to have something to talk about with other kids.
Yes.
Okay. So
I like how the whole thing is, we want to be invited to a party. Yeah. And from my experience, if you have $5, you are invited to a party. That's it.
Yeah.
I would say from my experience, you don't need any money to get invited to a party.
No.
Do they specify, is this a real college that they go to?
Yeah, Northwestern. He was wearing the sweatshirt.
This is the one that takes place at Northwestern?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I remember part of the reason why freshman year of college was so miserable for me was because I discovered how much I didn't like frat parties and sort of big clubby bars and stuff. But I never felt like I wasn't allowed to go to them. If you have one friend to roll up with you, that's pretty much all you need.
I loved Jason Bateman's line about, I spent 12 years or 13 years developing the David Hogan myth.
Yes.
And now it's gone. It's all gone. I have to start all over.
What he says is, I'm just another bozo in a beanie. And they get this idea from the dad, the guy that looks like the guy.
Whose parting words are, and we learned our lesson.
That is crazy. That's insane, just to be like, you know what I did to be popular in college? And he tells him the whole story about how he stole a mascot. And at the end, he's like, oh, but you probably shouldn't do that, right? Wink, wink. I got to fly to the Bahamas.
Well, not even wink, wink. He was just like,
so
but the best thing to come out of that was that we learned our lesson. Okay. I was like, what? What is happening? You are a horrible father.
It's best to learn your lesson once you're super popular.
Right.
Then you're like, oh, yeah, maybe that wasn't a great idea. Thank God I'm the most popular guy on campus now.
So they go and steal a Wolverine because Michigan is their arch rival.
It was occurring to me, I know nothing about Wolverines. Setting aside the Marvel Comics character, I couldn't pick a Wolverine out of a lineup. It's hilarious time capsule moment when one of the kids says to the other, grab the encyclopedia so we can find out what to feed him. It was occurring, they're
they've got celery and stuff, and this thing is like...
Yeah, they're describing the characteristics of a Wolverine. And I'm like, what even are they? Long story short, the Wolverine gets loose in their house.
Right, because they're very smart. So Wolverines are they're smart like foxes and
extreme
raccoons,
cunning,
right?
It says in the encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. And so he figured out how to open the latch on his cage.
Yeah, that was a funny
and then
moment.
Rip up all the furniture.
Oh yeah,
they're in they're in the kitchen or something. They're in somewhere else in the house.
Right, they're getting him
a conversation.
food, and that's when they're reading the encyclopedia and they realize that he's a carnivore and he's a nocturnal hunter and he's super crafty, and they hear this they
hear
noise.
the sound first of wires bending and stuff.
Right,
as he's saying extreme cunning, they hear the wires bending in real time. They're capable of problem solving, and then the latch opens.
That's why I have so many questions. You're not supposed to ask the questions we are while watching a sitcom,
Sure.
but where did they get this cage?
No, he was in the
didn't,
cage.
It could have escaped it.
Yeah.
But why didn't it escape at any
Because that
moment
wouldn't
then?
have been
why
as
would
comically
you keep it?
funny.
Well, and maybe because he wasn't agitated like he was being brought to the enemy house. That's what made him.
That's what it was.
I find it very funny that they are trying to feed it like it's a rabbit.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I'm a real idiot, but even at that age, I'd be like, I think I kind of know that Wolverine's dangerous.
Right, but they
like,
wouldn't
it's not
name it
like a gerbil.
Exactly. They wouldn't call it a Wolverine. That sounds like wolf.
Right.
You know, if it wasn't a little bit scary.
Yeah. I don't think college is for these three.
No, that's
Yeah,
that's
maybe
what
not.
we're coming to
Especially
realize.
Northwestern. Sheesh.
Now, all the
Hockey
while,
scholarship.
I don't want to get too bogged down by this, but this episode is called Animal House, but really, college thing is almost a B story. A lot of what's going on here is the other overlapping trope, computer dating, right? Now, we're a product of computer dating, right?
right.
This was the 80s version.
We didn't have to fill out a paper survey to mail it in to do a computer dating service. That's what I thought was so funny. It was like, we're signing you up for a computer dating service. We're filling out the survey here on paper, not on the computer.
It's so great. And I know this sitcom's from the 80s, but I'm even watching it going, where's the laptop?
Right.
Like, why didn't you just open the laptop?
How are they going to get this paper into the computer?
Yeah, it's the two younger sons, I guess, right?
Yes.
And so they've decided
they're twins.
This whole thing just sitcom-y as all get out, that they've decided to sign Sandy up for this completely against her will, against her knowledge. This guy shows up. She agrees to go out with him when she sees that he's sort of handsome, likable guy. And so she goes out with him. So that's why she's not around when any of this is happening. The only other thing I really wanted to say about that was just like it, again, not being super familiar with this show. When Sandy makes the super sitcom-y decision on her blind date of discovering that, the boys have told this guy that I'm a skydiver and a rock climber, and I'm going to go along with that lie. Now, granted, she walks it back eventually, but that tells me, like, okay, this is one of those kinds of shows. Like, this is a very silly sitcom show.
It took you that long to realize that? I was thinking kind of earlier on when the dad is in his pilot uniform and just like, oh, boys, okay.
Fair enough. But the difference is, I guess I'm looking to Sally or Sandy as the one who's going to be maybe the voice of reason, going to be the more normal one. And this tells me, no, she's going to behave in a very dopey, idiotic fashion. But so,
I mean, they have plenty in this series. They have plenty of times where at the end, they have the heartwarming music and the conversation, and she's normally the one having the conversation because, again, the dad's jet setting everywhere. It doesn't happen in this episode. I mean, honestly, this seems like such a bizarre episode to open your season with.
It is, right?
Well, it's just because, and it's interesting that the other ones we're going to talk about aren't season premieres, but it's just because, well, they're starting school. And so it's like, well, these kinds of shows generally aren't that serialized.
Yeah.
So I just assume that, like, well, if here's one where they're talking about school starting, then it makes sense to put that one up top. But yeah, maybe that's also what I'm saying is like, oh, this is kind of like the best that you got. This like dopey blind date scenario and this weird Wolverine thing.
All of our other episodes are like episode 3 or are episode 3 of the season. And it's because it's the right time for school to be starting. But it's such a ho-hum storyline that you don't do it as the first episode.
So this, we've got these sort of dueling A-plots that, like we're saying, are both sort of a little underwhelming. Sandy's blind date story resolves itself by she makes her confession. Oh, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to come clean. I'm not really a rock climber or a skydiver. I'm just a normal lady that lives with my brother that looks like MacGyver. And then he's like, oh, that's okay. I like you anyway. But by the way, police are nailing me down because I'm a criminal.
I'm not
It's
really
crazy.
a commodities trader.
Yeah,
except
the cops
for
come swarming
black market
in,
commodities.
And this guy is some sort of criminal.
I love how much you're so excited about Josh Taylor looking like MacGyver. There's just something great about it. Because, I mean, again, he was always just the dad from the Hogan family.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much hour-long television you guys watch, but he was also Dylan's dad in 90210.
Yep.
So those are the two things. Yeah, those are the things I know this guy from. I know he came from like Dylan McKay's dad's MacGyver.
To wrap this one up, we do get a Wolverine chase that I thought had a Martin energy, you know, that kind of crazy slapstick. I think we only get one brief shot of some kind of little puppety type thing, right? Like peeking around a door.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
But
it's kind of cute.
Yeah, they're not operating on the level of Martin when it comes to the crazy slapstick, but it does.
No,
it
they were not
devolves
trying to do
into
that.
chaos, running around the set. You know,
the ripping off of Sandy Duncan, who, by the way, has the best jackets. She looks like Suze Orman in all her fancy jackets.
Yep.
But
she
gets the arm of one of her outfits like ripped off by this Wolverine in the closet. And then when Edie McClurg, who we haven't mentioned yet, who plays the neighbor, comes over and is like helping the trapper, the wildlife trapper, to lure this animal out of the tree because it's run out of the house and it's gotten up in the tree outside. Sandy goes, "Here, use this," and like rips away the other sleeve that she had on her outfit. And I was looking at it because it was, you know, it had like these nice, it was red and had these nice puffy sleeves, and it wasn't overly shoulder padded like what often happens in the time. It looked really nice, and I was like, oh, I kind of like that. And then when the sleeve was gone, the sort of half sleeve that she had looked nice. It was very tailored. I was like, oh, that looks really good. And then she ripped the other one off and the same thing happened. And I was like, tearaway clothes.
Looks great. It's fantastic.
So do we get any sort of like lesson learning wrap up here? Is there any like kind of denouement of like, oh, now we won't try to do crazy pranks or anything like that?
I mean, I think they all were just like, yeah, we definitely learned our lesson because we almost got eaten. But there was Sandy Duncan had a moment, right, where she was saying, look, you know, kind of relating his experience, the boy's experience at college to her experience trying to like find a man to date in this new town.
Yeah, which is just basically in the broadest possible strokes, like adjustments are hard, right? That's basically the trope that we're tracking. Adjustments are hard. Sometimes it takes a while to get used to new situations.
Yeah, it's a real ham-fisted, like the writers had two stories that were like, I guess we'll put these in the same episode and figure out how they relate later.
Yeah, just like you don't need to lie on your dating profile, you also don't need to do something wild to make friends in college.
Yeah, that's true.
Makes sense to me.
All right, let's see how this continues moving into Family Ties.
Season 3, Episode 3, Little Man on Campus.
Yeah, so we've talked about Family Ties many times at this point. This is one of your A-list, top-notch sitcoms. Doug, any opening opinions on Family Ties?
Family Ties is a show that I am totally embarrassed to say that I did not watch when it was on.
You had horrible parents.
I didn't either.
This is probably wrong. This might be the only episode of the show I've ever seen. I want to watch the whole thing now. Just
Isn't
from
it
one
great?
episode, I was like, this is great. I know at the end we talk about our favorite episode. This was fantastic. Like every joke hit. I was like, this is Alex P. Keaton, Michael J. Fox is doing a killer job. Like, it's easy to look back and because of what we know now to be like, that's a star. But man, like in my podcast, we do it all the time. Like, we'll see. We saw Sharon Stone in whatever that Wes Craven movie, Deadly Blessing, and she's like a third build character. She's electric on screen. You can't keep your eyes off her. He's phenomenal. He's acting circles around everyone else in this show, and everyone's doing a great job. So
everyone's really good.
I want to watch this whole show. Like I want to start from the beginning and go through. This is great, and I know I'm so late to it.
No, but highly recommend.
Well, I think that's the thing that kind of, as a kid, turned me off to this because I don't know, like there's alcoholism and stuff. Isn't what's his face like an alcoholic uncle or something?
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, it was like that super famous guy.
That guy.
And that stuff. When I was a kid, I was not. I liked Growing Pains, but the cocaine episode, no thank you. So,
right, so you weren't into the
where
very
Carol's
special
boyfriend
episodes.
dies?
You didn't like when they got like super serious and dramatic.
No, because normally I'm watching them with my parents, and it's like watching a movie and suddenly boobs are out. I'm like, I don't want to sit here and watch this with my parents.
So everybody, lots is going on here. We start at the breakfast table, and we've got pregnant mom. We've got everybody starting their new school. Alex is going to Leland University.
That's right.
Is this a real place?
I don't think so. After being courted by Ivy Leagues and, wanting to go to Stanford like his uncle Tom Hanks and wanting to go to Princeton, I think it was, like Mallory's boyfriend in the previous season, like all of this. I mean, they had all of this like lead up that he's this big smart guy. He's going to go to an Ivy. Oh, wait, he got a full ride scholarship to the college around the corner.
McKinley Scholarship.
And that's right. And it is the best school in the area. So you go there, not the Ivies.
No.
Yeah, so this, let's just address it here, right? This is across the board, this contrivance to keep the casts together. Sure. To have them attend the local schools. It's just what's so bizarre to me is I feel like this time that we're talking about, 80s and definitely the 90s, basically the time that we were graduating high school, I feel like it was at an all-time high, this societal pressure to go to college. This idea that the only way to make something of yourself is to go to college. And any sitcom that has any sort of a conscience, you have to depict your young characters going to college. And yet it's ignoring that most people who have some sort of aspirational bent to their, or even if it is just like we were talking about before, the social aspect of it, the vast majority of young people want to go away to college, I feel like, and that's just never addressed by anyone.
But like you said, I'm about to go to college, and I'm like, the only person I've seen go is like Theo Huxtable. Like that was kind of it. Like he kind of walked.
Did he go away?
Theo went 4 years, went away. He'd pop in to do his laundry or whatever. He'd still have an episode.
But that's because they had eight other kids, so it was fine, right?
Exactly.
That is the thing. You need backups. Yeah.
Yeah, they had all the other kids.
Yeah.
And look, Alex P. Keaton is come on. This show, there's so much Michael J. Fox. Everybody's great, but come on, you gotta have him. He's so good. And the thing that bothers me though, because what they did in the Hogan family, I didn't mind. Northwestern is a real school. It's a good school, and it's right there. That makes sense. You know what school that's a real school and a good school and is right there? The Ohio State University, but they didn't send him there.
Well, that's a choice, though. That's just any movie or TV show you decide, is your movie star Mel Gibson or Johnny Dakota? Are you going to have real people or fictional people? And for whatever reason, they chose to have the aforementioned Leland University and McKinley Scholarship. I took it as maybe it's because we could believe Ohio State University is a good school, but maybe we could believe that Leland University really rivaled your Princetons and your Yales.
That's how I looked at it. It's the local Ivy equivalent, and I think it's
the local prestige,
right? Yeah, and those exist all over the place. Sure, where I am in Pennsylvania, like Princeton's right across the river, and you would love to go to Princeton, but there's other schools that are considered really, really great schools that are smaller and more local. I do find it hard to accept the fact that Alex P. Keaton would not be at an Ivy League institution.
Exactly. Of all people, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It turns out to be a good thing because he immediately gets his comeuppance by finding a professor who it's like for the first time in his life, he's meeting an authority figure who's like, I expect something more from you.
Yeah. So let's dig in here. We've got the first of our three professors that are going to challenge our main character here, but this one later on we're gonna get cool, hip youth, fun,
Professor
youth
Lasky
pastor
from
professors.
Saved by the Bell.
This time we've got My two reference points, I know that this is not that actor, but the two people he was reminding me of are the evil mob boss from Adventures in Babysitting, who's stalking them because he needs to get the Playboy. Where's the Playboy? That guy. And the evil businessman at the end of Requiem for a Dream, who's going ass to ass when Jennifer Connelly has to do.
Those are pretty deep cuts.
And why do they both talk like this?
Because that's how this guy talks.
Is there a chance
this guy's like a gremlin?
actor?
It's not, but he looks like him. This is Michael Maguire. Okay, we also need to track the fact that the professors, at least two of them, maybe the third one, their names end in ski. We've got Bronsky and Lansky so far.
Interesting.
Right?
This guy is Bronsky.
Yes,
right?
this is Bronsky. And did you see baby ginger Timothy Busfield as the best friend? I was like, my favorite redhead Sorkin player.
Yeah, he's great. I don't know why they put him in these suspenders. It's like a it's like a knockoff Robin Williams. He is
dressed like a clown.
He did. He looks like Mork.
Yeah. But this guy, so this professor, this class is First Amendment, right? Mm-hmm. So this professor is doing your sort of basic Socratic method type stuff. Yeah. And this, like I said, this guy is not going to win you over with goofing around. If anything, he's got this sort of opposite journey where he starts off being very sort of craggly and just kind of hard-edged, and then he's going to soften a little bit over time. But basically, this professor throws out this sort of softball thing of like, well, the First Amendment says that free speech is absolute, and yet our government often limits free speech. What might one make of that? And Alex immediately gets up and starts making a fool of himself, like starts stammering.
The professor didn't really pose a question. He posed a rhetorical that, and in doing so had already sort of given the answer. Like the rhetorical was, "Don't you think that's incongruous?" or something like that.
Yeah.
And so Alex like raises his hand, stands up, and is like, "Yes, I think that's incongruous." Like just wanting to agree with him, wanting to get on his good side. So he didn't stand up having anything to say other than to brown nose.
So now, Doug, is this something that you deal with? See, this is where we're starting to weave our conversational tapestry. Is this something that you deal with?
I'm glad you called that out, Jeff.
As a professor, that sort of impulse telling you what you want to hear, that sort of like, oh, me, and actually derailing and getting in the way?
I do find that is something very frustrating, is that students, if I have them a lot, I teach in the visual arts, so it's a lot different than this, but they start to recognize, I think, what I like. Like they start to know what I like to see, what I gravitate toward. And it's dumb to say like they'll choose certain fonts because they know that I like them, but it's even little things like that. Amy, the one thing I want to say, though, is I agree with everything you said. The big thing that I was thinking, though, is that this is all new to him. You know, if you're in high school, you know who you're going to have the next year. You know who's had them. You can plan 4 years in the future. Those teachers have heard of you. They know what to expect. They know you're smart. Like, he's going in fresh into a brand new environment. He does not know how to act.
Oh, so true. And he is relying, like resting on his laurels in the way of, look, I know if nothing else, I can just parrot back what you just said. Right. And you're going to be like, ding, brownie point. But that didn't happen. And I loved it. Yeah. Oh, it was like the best thing. I had a professor, I had a teacher in high school, my AP history teacher, still love history to this day, but who was like this, who was just like, everything that you think is wrong, think again, try again, like have a different idea. And I'm just like, yeah. And I was like, I saw that in this professor right away. And I was like, come on, Alex, don't be a boring in the box kid. Like I was just waiting for him to get past it.
And this is going to happen again. So that's like round one, right? Is like Alex is humiliated. He shits the bed trying to answer this question that was not even meant to be a question. Then his chance to redeem himself is going to be writing this paper.
Yeah,
right?
He
so
doubles
he
down.
home.
He's like, I'm going to do all this research. I'm gonna, say all the things that like put all the mind of the world that I can find into this paper.
He's studying. He's researching this paper, and then he still does bad. He thinks that the professor is complimenting him, and it turns out that he's complimenting Timothy Busfield in the suspenders. And what the professor says is his essay was long-winded and lacking in any meaningful insight, right? And as he does, well, before we even get to the back and forth they have, Alex is so crestfallen by that he's like...
He's never gotten an F before. He can't even say it.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
So funny.
It is really great.
My favorite part is him going back to Mallory and asking her, like, totally sincerely,
amazing,
what is it like to not do well in school?
Yeah. Well, and I love Mallory's thing, right? She was, when she's talking about what it's like when she doesn't get a good grade, like when she's sitting there on a test, she's like, I think I know everything. And then I look at the questions and then everything kind of goes gray. Everything feels gray. And then I start to think about boys. And I was like, it was just really, and it was so earnest the way she was talking about it.
I really connected with that. I was not, and I think that's one of the things that honestly I take a lot of pride in as a professor is if any of my students saw what type of student I was, they would not trust me to teach them anything. I was a below average student in high school, and I may have become an average student in college. Like, that's as good as I got. So it really connected with me how she was describing taking tests, because I would do the same thing. Like, it's not that I didn't care. It's not that I didn't know anything. It just kind of all was mushy. And I'm like, I don't know. I thought I knew. I have no idea. My biggest laugh was when he said that he got a B in health because he voluntarily didn't watch the sex ed videos. Her response
boycotted the sex ed film.
Her response of, you missed some good stuff, Alex, was really funny. I thought that was
a
line of the
great
episode.
1-2 punch. He does poorly on his test, and he's going to drop the course, which is a maneuver I pulled all the time, by the way, in college. And that's when the teacher, I guess he needs the teacher's permission to drop it, or
no,
maybe he's just informing
he tells him. Yeah, he's just like, so, I'm gonna... He goes into like say goodbye basically because he's so embarrassed, and he's like, I respect you so much. I don't want to besmirch your class by having a dummy like me in it. So I'm going to drop the class.
If I could jump in real quick. If any of my students are listening, please do this. I wish students did this. Students just disappear. And I'm like, I don't know.
Don't ghost me, man.
Are they just not doing the work anymore? Because they'll remain. That's the other thing. The way, and again, it might just be the way my school does it. They'll remain on the roster. They're still there.
How big are your classes?
Oh, my classes are pretty small. My classes are capped at 18. I can't have more than 18 in the room. And if somebody's not there and they're gone, I'm going to notice. And again, like, it doesn't say they withdrew until I'm inputting final grades. So the whole time I'm like, I'm giving the person zeros. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And so I do I hate to say I take it personally sometimes. I'm like, man, what a shame. Like, I hope I wasn't doing anything wrong.
Well, and that's why I think about, there's something to be said about having to go, like we see in The Fresh Prince and we see in this episode, where you have to go and get a slip signed in order to drop, because then you get to have that moment of a real conversation.
Yeah, but also that's so awkward. Like, as a student, I wouldn't have wanted to do that. Like, as a student, if you're going to drop a class, you email the registrar, or you go to your advisor. Like, you don't have to talk to that teacher, especially if I had a weird, I don't want to say sparring match with the professor, but I got up and made an idiot out of myself and I failed a paper. I would not want to go to that guy and be like, I really have to get out of this class.
Oh man, see, I'm all about this builds character. Like, go have a conversation. I'm such a boomer, I guess.
Well, but Alex's particular emotional journey here, I feel like no college kid, I don't think this thing of like, I'm going to the professor as like a samurai committing seppuku or something, you know, like I need to like shame myself. But
Alex P. Keaton would do that.
Yeah.
He wants to go have this like man-to-man conversation and just tell him how much he respects him. I'm not dropping the class because of anything having to do with you. Right. It's because of me, and I feel like I'm letting you down, and I don't want you to have to put up with having an imbecile in your class, and I'm clearly not cut out for this.
Yeah, and the professor says that's a dull way for an intelligent young man to live life. And the distinction that the professor is trying to get him to understand, he does his Socratic method thing again. He's asking him questions. He's trying to, they're still on this First Amendment thing, right? This Debs v. Eugene or whatever. And the idea is that Alex, he can only encapsulate other people's opinions and things that
he's parroting. He's giving back what he's read. He's not coming up with his own ideas. He's not doing any analysis, and that's not going to cut it in college. You need to. And the professor says multiple times, but what do you think? And Alex is like, well, William Rehnquist says blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, but what do you think? And he's like, well, so-and-so says da, 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 da. And he was like, that's still not what you think. Yeah. And then he insults him again. And then Alex is like, well, if you really want to know, I think da, 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 da. And he comes off with this much more liberal opinion than you would ever hear from Alex P. Keaton on free speech. And the professor is like, now that's what I'm asking for in your paper. I can read the encyclopedia myself. I want to know what you think now that you've read all that stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, did you guys get a sense, was there a subtle change to the way they present this professor where he starts to seem a little bit less like the ass-to-ass guy or the evil mob boss? God. Whatever they were doing with him, I think this actor did a good job, because at the end of the day, I don't really think they changed anything about his appearance. But the way that he's carrying himself in this later scene as he's trying to discourage Alex from dropping the class, you get the impression all of a sudden, at least I did, of this guy, he's not quite as old as I thought he was before. He doesn't seem as uptight. He starts to seem like, oh no, this is just like a teacher. He's kind of a nice guy.
Yeah, he softens a little bit. He loosens up a little bit, but he still has that professional or whatever gravitas about him. And I think that's the thing, and we'll get into these next two episodes. I think that's the thing I didn't enjoy about the other ones, is they introduce themselves as goofballs, and I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously after that. I really can't. If that's the type of professor you are, if you're just a silly goose, fine, just be that, but don't expect me to really take anything from you.
No, the toxic professor personality traits that we get from these three white men are off the charts.
Well, not this guy. What did this guy do that was
this
so
guy,
bad?
No, this guy has the thing of, I'm going to be the worst to you. I'm going to be the worst to you, and it's going to be the best thing that ever happened, right? And then, like you're saying, towards the end of the episode, he sort of softens, but he still is having his high expectations. Right. Now, my personal preference, I like teachers like that. I want somebody not to give me any breaks because I will game the system at every turn. I want somebody to be like, you're better than even you think you are. You know what I mean? I want that challenge. That's what I want. But that's not true for everybody. People have different learning styles, right? But what I will say, and to your point, the thing that I hate the most are these dudes that we're going to see coming up that think they are so fucking funny. Yeah.
Oh,
these are
insufferable. But
the narcissists in charge of these classrooms in Saved by the Bell and in Fresh Prince. Both of them sleep with their students. You can just tell.
Okay, now before we
these are some serious allegations.
Right, and I'm about to say some things here.
Confessions? Okay.
Well, no, this Family Ties professor, this is the one that I always want to be, but it is not 3 weeks into the class, and I'm that fucking asshole from Saved by the Bell. Like, I can't stop. Like, I can't. Like, my students realize I'm a pushover so early on. I'm like, damn it. I can't keep up that facade very long.
That is funny. Yeah, look, I'll say this guy, like, again, he's the sitcom version of it, so you have to make allowances.
Right.
You know, Michael J. Fox, like we're saying, is being dopier than any person would ever be. I think in the broad strokes, this guy is okay in my book. I think he's doing a good job, and his whole thing of like, I'm stern, but I'm basically gonna like give you enough rope to hang yourself with if you want to like stand up and waste time in my classroom. And if you do take it too hard, I'll find a way to actually bring it back and engage with you.
Like I said, of the three, he would be the one I choose, but I also recognize that is a personal preference.
We'll see how all this continues as we get into our really wacky professors with Saved by the Bell, The College Years.
Season 1, Episode 3, Zack Lies and Videotape.
Yeah, so I definitely remember when the students of Bayside High graduated, the prime time Saved by the Bell experience.
I was excited for this.
Yeah, and then I remember Saved by the Bell, The College Years happening. Doug, where were you? What is your Saved by the Bell experience?
All right. Again, I feel bad. I feel like Saved by the Bell was something everyone I knew watched. I didn't watch it. I really didn't. I've seen it enough in syndication to know what it is or what it was. I knew that Saved by the Bell, The College Years was a thing that existed and that Bob Golick was in it. But this is the first time I watched it. I was like, this is a disaster.
That is you're in?
Yes.
Because you were into sports, right?
That guy?
Yeah. Well, I knew enough about sports to know who Bob Golick was. And even in my stupid brain, like when he showed up, I was like, oh my God, I knew he was. Why did I know he was in this? Like I forgot about it. But no, I've never seen this before. I'd never seen this show. I knew it was.
That tracks.
I will say, but I tuned in when this started. And I probably watched it for as long as it was on, but it was very clear that the magic was gone and this transition.
Lasted one season.
Yeah, they were trying to pull off a transition from a Saturday morning show that was basically, you know, an aspirational show for tweens, for young teenagers or children to see high school kids, you know, just like the welcome freshmen or something. And so now to try to have that be an actual legit primetime show that is going to be like, you know, for all of America to tune in and watch. And yet, like, it just doesn't have the quality, like the, you know, the comedy.
Well, it not only does it not have the comedy, but it just doesn't have the stories, right? Like, think about the other kind of college age, like these age kids that were on shows, they're mentioning, like, they name drop 90210, right? Luke Perry, Tori Spelling. Right. They name drop River Phoenix, who, by the way, dies like a month after the episode.
I had to look that up. I was like, oh, wow.
The one thing I want to call out about Saved by the Bell, The College Years, one of the many things that are vastly inferior to the original is the theme song, right? If you know nothing about Saved by the Bell, you know the iconic theme song, right? You wake up in the morning, your alarm gives out a warning. Everybody knows that. The graphics that look like a shirt that Vinny Del Pino would wear with the little clip art things floating around there. And so they're like, all right, well, we need something new for the college years. Let's make a song called Standing at the Edge of Tomorrow.
Standing at the edge of tomorrow.
Like, is there a chance this was sung by the California Dreams? Is there a chance?
Oh, man.
No, the California Dreams are spinning in their graves.
They're Nielsen graves.
This is butt rock in the worst
Wait, I'm sorry,
way.
what is it?
That is what a friend of mine used to describe certain music with, and it
butt rock
has never...
Butt rock, fart rock.
Yeah, and the same thing with the visuals in this, all of the dumb 90s filters and color distortions and everything. Like, it's just, I don't know, it was just such a bummer, and it just totally distills, like, we have learned nothing. Like, we made this show that was dumb, but people loved it. Now we're going to find a way to somehow make it still be dumb, but take away everything that people liked it and make it different in ways that are all bad. Now, here's what I'll say about our professor that we're going to get in this episode.
Yummy.
We're going to have...
His hair is amazing.
Oh, and he knows it too.
So,
how many times did he run his hands through it at the beginning of every line?
This is Professor Lasky, played by Patrick Fabian, who technically I have worked with because I did the animation for the Better Call Saul web series, and Patrick Fabian now plays Howard Hamlin on Better Call Saul, which is an amazing role for him.
Ooh, he's Silver Foxy now.
I remember responding to this actor at this time, and then I remember he showed up in the 2000s in the movie The Last Exorcist, and it's like a faux documentary, like a found footage movie about like a charlatan exorcist, like a fake priest, and it turns out to be real, and it's a pretty good movie for that kind of thing, and he was really good in that, and I remember noticing, oh, that's the professor guy from Saved by the Bell. I really liked him. And then he popped up again in this pretty major part in Better Call Saul throughout the whole series. And so, I really love this actor, and he just totally nails the cheesy, I'm a grown-up, but I'm still cool vibe that they're going for.
Oh, yeah. He's trying way too hard to be friends with Zack.
Well, friends, it's entrapment.
Why would you want to be friends with Zack, too?
Right? No, I swear, it's like he sees this guy that has his hair, and he's like, oh, I know this kid. I'm going to get this kid on my side. So the episode starts, and they're in this class, and he is the professor sitting in the audience.
He's incognito. He's not letting on that he's the professor.
Totally chilling in the back of the class with Zack. And he's like, oh, man, I hear this class is crazy. And Zack's like, oh, yeah, well, whatever. And he's like, yeah, getting up so early. It's so hard. I've got the midterm. You want it? $20. He's like, I usually sell it for $50. And Zack's like, hell yeah. Like, first of all, Zack, you're stupid. Yes. Who the fuck is this guy? You don't even know who this guy is.
Really stupid.
Second of all, this professor, seriously? Like, okay, if this was part of an anthropological study and that you used that interaction to, like, talk about the machinations of the, like, surfer dude college guy, okay, maybe. But no, he just gets up and he's like, hey, some people think they can buy the midterms, and then Professor Lasky, this is the class. And the only redeeming quality about him is that he's hot. That's it.
Yeah. No, that's it. He's running around the class, jumping on his desk. And again, like you kind of said, if he was there teaching them anything, if any of this, if at the end of the episode anything made sense, or I had an idea that somebody learned something, it might justify this character a little more. But no, he's just super hot, and this is just, I still don't understand what Zack is submitting at the end and what that's supposed to teach him or anyone about anything.
I put forth that the reason Lasky wants Zack to go around and interview women to figure out what women really want is so that this professor can have a reason to have a videotape full of all of the college girls that are running around campus, so he can be like, what does this woman want? What does this woman want? It is Mel Gibson in that movie when the women, like what women want, where the women talk in his head.
Yeah. I think within the world of the show... Gross. I get why you get that vibe, but I think within the world of the show, he is supposed to be a benevolent guy that's not up to that. Although there is going to be an episode where Kelly has the hots for him, at least. Maybe it's even like consummated. I don't remember exactly where that goes. So I'm not trying to say you're totally off base with that, but I do feel the need to defend Professor Lasky. I feel like we are supposed to experience him as primarily a cool guy
who's cool.
Who's not going to bang the
right,
female
but
students.
that's what I'm saying, which is if this is a show for teens, I think that's dangerous, because if you get a folksy, overly friendly authority figure, that person is very likely trying to groom you.
Yeah, look, this guy and definitely the guy in the next show are pretty insufferable. But I will say, like, I had cool, funny professors that were the real life version of what this is a very lame caricature of, that did engage everybody, and I'm sure the female students had crushes on them.
And I'm going to say, like, thinking back, because I did watch this show when I was like 12 or 13 when it came on, and I did not have any of these reactions. Lasky did exactly what he was supposed to do, charm the pants off of me, and I thought he was great.
And we should say the girl characters are all there. Like, the three girl cast members
and eyeing over him.
Are all, in the front row, all adjacent to each other, creaming their shorts, just like looking at this guy.
Yeah.
Just like...
It's just such a bizarre, like... They're all taking class together, except for Screech, right? He's not there.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about this for a second.
Screech is there. He's up. He's in a further row.
Yeah.
He's next to
So
Slater.
now we've got Jesse and Lisa are the only two original cast members who aren't there. Kelly wasn't there at first for the pilot, and then she came back on board. So we're building on this trope of not only is the sitcom character going to the local school, now we're having everyone, we're having the whole friend group from high school all matriculate.
Well, nearly
together.
all of them. And, to their credit, though, Jessie got into Stanford, right? So she is gone.
Right. She got into showgirls in real life.
Yes.
But, Lark Voorhees and Berkeley aren't there. But like we said, the four of them are. So that's just another fun trope to track. And of course, look, Saved by the Bell, the college years, we should just call it out, is a bizarre creature in and of itself. I mean, there's no other thing that's really like this, a show that's just the college years, where we took another show and started a whole new show that's a spin-off, but it's the same people, and just now they're in college.
Well, you've got the Golden Palace.
Yeah, fair enough. You went from girls to palace. It's sort of the same.
They went from hanging out at home to now they own a hotel.
So look, Professor Lasky, the reason why we find his teachings so weird is because he is...
Because we're old and jaded now.
No, it's because it's fully this trope of the class is just going to be whatever we want the show to be about, right? So of course, his quote-unquote anthropology class is dating class. Yeah. It's all about courting rituals. He has them get up and role play courtship, quote unquote, which is just like, hey, Zack and Leslie. Leslie was going to be the new Kelly, and then Kelly came back, and so now they have two hot girls that Zack has a will they won't they with. So he's just like,
I was really wondering, because I was like, what is this character? Like, what is she supposed to be?
She's just supposed to be the smart, straight-edged girl that he's going to try to wear her down and romance her. This was a case, I think, of the pilot being shot separately, right? Yeah. Because sometimes some places have the pilot as episode 0. And so I think it was one of these, like we see all the time now getting into these shows, the second episode is sort of the first episode. It's they've retooled things, the set looks different, the cast is a little different. So so we have two female leads now, Leslie and Kelly. And so Professor Lasky's class is Zack, hit on Leslie and we'll all watch, basically.
Yeah. And he's like, he's providing commentary too through the whole thing, where he's like, well, now she's crossing her arms. Clearly, the female is not interested. I would be so creeped out if I was in this class.
And this is the stuff, honestly, maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I've listened to podcasts and stuff where those dudes sort of break down the science of talking to girls and everything, and body language and whatnot.
So weird.
And
how'd that work for you, hon?
Great. It's anthropological, sure, but is that what you should be teaching on day one of an anthropology class?
But that's also not the way you do it. Your case study can't be kids standing up in front of the class role playing. Your case study needs to be a real case study.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't need to learn anything from my sitcom college episodes, but I took anthropology in college. None of this was discussed. Like there's no way anything that is talked about in this guy's class would be discussed in a real class. And I also feel really bad saying that this is the kind of teacher I am. I just meant that I'm an idiot goofball and I tell jokes that my students do not laugh at and are not entertained by, and I take everything.
So you're more like the guy from Fresh Prince with all of his impressions.
I'm not doing impressions. I am not doing impressions. That's the reason I chose this guy.
You can't handle the truth.
Do you on the first day of school, do you sit amongst the kids and see if anyone believes you to be So this is another case of like Zack decides that he doesn't want to take the class anymore. Right.
He's been singled out. Right. He felt like he was made a fool out of by having to be the one. Alex. Yeah, by having to be the one that was like in this case study in front of everybody, and it was very awkward and embarrassing. And I would be mad if I was Zack in that situation too. Like that's not okay. Like that was totally uncomfortable and not fun. And you didn't learn anything from it. It was like a waste of time. So he's like, you know what? I don't want to be in this class. I don't want to get up at 8 a.m. I don't want to, this is stupid. And the teacher is like, the professor's like, well, hey, if you want to never come to class again, and I'll give you a B, but you have to go around and you have to do an anthropological study.
Yeah, this is all like in Lasky's private office. This is like a little private conversation that
he's sleeping in.
Yes.
It looks like his apartment.
All part of his young
He's got
guy.
a bed out.
Because he splits his time.
Right. That he's sleeping with students in.
Exactly.
You're right. Yeah. There's, and even just to.
So many red flags.
I'm sure they did not mean it to be that way when they made this show, but instantly I was like, well, this seems wildly inappropriate to be in this sitcom.
Yeah, it does. What is his other thing? He splits his time between that and
the
he
van
sleeps
at
on
the beach.
Yeah.
He lives in a van at the beach on the weekends, but during the week he sleeps in his office.
Summer school.
Upstanding citizen.
He's like Chris Farley from Van Down by the River.
Exactly.
Yeah, so he has this proposal that is sitcom-y as hell.
Find out what women want.
Yeah, he says specifically, he goes like, Zack, I think that your problem is you don't know anything about women. And Zack
because that's your problem with not doing well in my class, is that you don't know anything about women.
Yeah, and Zack says, and I quote, I've been scoping chicks since I was in the third grade.
That's so creepy.
And then he gets like a standing ovation from the audience.
He does.
I am shocked that these two didn't high five at the end of the episode or something.
I mean, they
that's
basically
how close
did.
This is. Yeah. Yeah, when he offers to film the girls' volleyball team for him or something.
Oh, he's like, are you sure you don't want the girls' swim team footage?
Yeah, well, and he's going to proceed to pull that maneuver. But yeah, as Lasky explains, I will give you a free B in the class. You don't have to show up to the early classes or whatever. All you have to do is make me a video essay in which you address the question, what do women want?
Yeah, what do women really want?
What the hell? It's just such a strange assignment.
I really enjoyed Zack's reaction to this, because the fact that he's like, you got it, man, and left. And I was like, no follow-up questions from me. None at all. Like, you totally know what the assignment is and what he's looking for, because I'm confused watching this show. I have no idea what you're going to go to.
Yeah. And then Zack he's right back to his old tricks. This is, one of his go-to maneuvers whenever there's a female sleepover happening, is to physically penetrate the premises.
Whoa,
and
penetrate.
Just sneak around the couch, hide under the bed or whatever. And yeah, he's filming them secretly, like that's going to be his anthropology footage.
Yes. Well, first he goes and just is like hitting on women and trying to be like, what do you want? Do you want this? Do you want that? And Screech keeps making comments and it's like blowing his chances, but he gets like 18 girls' numbers. That's the thing that he gets.
And that's the other thing that I can't buy as a comedic bit or whatever they're trying to do here when he's like, this is really helping me get girls' numbers. I'm like, you're an early 90s Mark Paul Gosselaar. You don't need help getting girls' numbers.
Well, that's the funny thing. That time and time again, that's what I say about Barney and How I Met Your Mother. All these guys, they're good-looking, extroverted, successful people. Like, they don't need to pretend to be an astronaut from Mars to get women to sleep with them. No, but it's the fun of it. Yeah, it's because they are sociopaths and they enjoy tricking people. That's part of the appeal. It's lots of that. And then, we get the aforementioned sleepover. I guess it's not a sleepover anymore if you live together in a dorm
it's just the
room.
girls hanging out in the dorm room.
Yeah, he's sneaking around. He's, at least they have this is in the real world enough to have the girls discover him pretty quickly and dump their popcorn on him over the side of the couch when they see him sneaking around.
And then what kind of turns the tide, right? When he's talking to them and he's like, nobody will give me a real interview. And they're like, that's because you're just hitting on everyone.
And Kelly is like, he turns on a dime. Kelly is like, Zack, you never really listen. You never really ask anybody about anything. You're not interested in people. And Zack's like, well, I'm interested in you. What do you want to do with your life? And for apparently the first time in their 12-year relationship, he learns that she's interested in healthcare.
I couldn't believe it. I love that you brought that up because that was the most shocking thing about this episode. I'm like, how have you not had this same conversation at least a dozen times?
You've been friends since you were 9.
Just basic things like what you want to do when you grow up. And he doesn't take any other prodding than that. He just, it is just like it never crossed his mind to ask her a question.
Right. And then as she starts answering, he goes over and grabs the camera and points it at her, but isn't looking at it exactly. And then she's just, because it's Kelly and she's comfortable with him, she's talking. And then the other girls come in and the one girl, she's going to be an actress. Alex is, studying to be an actress. So he's like, do you mind the camera? And she's like, no, the camera loves me. And then the other girl, Leslie, comes in and he's like, is it okay with the camera? And she's like, it's all right. Just don't put it right in my face,
Yeah. And he continues getting his answers. They all start talking about guys always have a hidden agenda or whatever. And so we see this sort of transition into now Zack has learned how to film women saying their feelings.
Yeah, because what women really want is to sit around and talk about guys.
Yeah.
Yes. His film
That's
is
what
not
I
going
learned
to pass the
from this.
Obvi.
What he realizes at the end of the episode when he talks to the teacher, this was shocking to me, is the revelation when he's like, I guess girls are just kind of like us guys. And I was like, oh, you found out that women are human beings? This is man, so terrible.
This man who has had great girlfriends for years, right? Yeah. He's the one that held Jessie when she was in her crazed out, whacked out speed pills moments, right? He was the best friend that was there for her. Same with Lisa Turtle. He was the best friend. So it's he's always had these scams and things going on, but you have been in a really cohesive co-ed friend group for a long time.
Yes.
You have to be able to know that girls are people.
It is a little bit of that How I Met Your Mother thing we talk about, where there's this weird bifurcation between the girls that are his friends are just he sees them as people, but they're not girls. And so I guess Professor Lasky is helping him break down that barrier or something.
The one beat that is a little different and is still very, very staid is the, Professor Lasky, Zack has turned in his video essay. He's gotten his B. He's offered the swim team footage for an A. He's been turned down. And, now it's the next day in class. And Lasky, it's 4 minutes after 8. And he's sitting on his desk and he hasn't started class yet. And he looks up at the clock. And then the camera cuts back to him and he's got this sort of pensive, Ah, well, I tried. Look. And he goes, well, I guess we're going to start class because everybody that's going to be here is here. And he goes to start class all disappointed in his heart that Zack didn't show up anyway because he reached him. And then, and then class starts and off he goes. And then in comes Zack. And he stops class. Like none of the rest of these students matter. Only Zack matters. And he walks to the back of the class in this auditorium lecture hall when Zack walks in and he's like, you came.
Oh, well, and Zack has to announce himself with a joke. Zack can't just walk in the back door. He has to say, oh, because the cavemen didn't have cable TV. Whatever.
I'm here.
Whatever. That's how Zack Morris walks into a room.
Yeah. So the heroes welcome and the two, most narcissistic, best hair gents at Cal U are have a little happy bro reunion, and then anthropology can start and everybody can start to learn, I guess.
I do like imagining the other students in the class being like, who is this asshole? Like,
why is
going on?
him?
I thought we were done with him. I thought we were done with him constantly interrupting the professor, but now he's back.
And then I just want to say that this episode ends, right? We have had precious little of our Zack addressing the camera. That used to be a big thing on the original Saved by the Bell.
And it's so weird when it happens in this.
It was so weird. I didn't like it.
He says, stick around. It's going to be an interesting year. So, okay, have we reached the end of Saved by the Bell? Any final Saved by the Bell thoughts?
Ring the bell.
All right. Ring. Moving on to maybe our wackiest professor of all. We're talking The Fresh Prince.
We are in season 4, episode 3, All Guts, No Glory.
So yeah, The Fresh Prince did pull off this transition as well as could be expected. We have this is what we talked about in our first ever podcast episode, Losing Our Virginity. That was in the college years too. Will and Carlton go to the same college despite having vastly different academic profiles. They're both here at this local, is this a real one? Is this USC or?
No, this is like a portmanteau of UCLA and USC. It's like ULA or something like that.
Gotcha. So yeah, we get this first scene of them at the registrar, and we get more great, 90s sexual politics, right? We get Will, just his big joke is, I'll have what she's having, about the sexy girl at the registrar's desk. I don't know. Any thoughts on this cold open?
I think I honestly thought stuff like this landed better in here than it did in Saved by the Bell.
Sure.
But the thing I was constantly reminded with is I was like, boy, Will and Mark Paul Gosselaar, they would either be, and I know I'm using their real names, they would either be mortal enemies or they'd be the best of friends.
Well, I think they would have a Slater and Zack type relationship.
Yeah, right. There you go. Oh my God. I can't believe we didn't talk about Slater's mullet, which is 4 years too late. He can't wear his hair like that in 1993.
I mean, the RA did too, the football guy. So.
Well, and truthfully, that was a bad point for Mark Paul's hair too. He's doing the long hair thing that didn't.
Yeah,
really
but the high,
work
he's
for him.
doing the high front.
Yeah. Yes. He's got a perm that's a mullet. Yeah. That's not, you can't put those two things together. All right, okay, great. Sorry.
I'll tell you who looks amazing, Tyra Banks in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Well, of course. So these episodes, the Saved by the Bell and this Fresh Prince, they aired 3 weeks apart. That's, this is the
both
same.
93, and these are both episode 3 of their respective seasons. And so, this is going to be a very similar vibe. New college, we're freshmen, we're starting class. What's it going to be like? And we've got this isn't exactly an incognito entrapment situation like Professor Lasky. What we get is a professor who's just simply the worst dressed college professor that I've ever seen. And so maybe unwittingly creates the impression of being a student. They first encounter him in the store, right?
The bookstore, right. He's working at the the campus bookstore, and this professor who he doesn't know is a professor comes in because he's just wearing like a school t-shirt, and he's trying to give him a list of books to be like, hey, we want you, will you pull these books for me, whatever. And Will is in the process of trying to hit on every girl in the bookstore by being on the microphone and making announcements. And this guy interrupts him and he's like, yeah, I'll get to it. And then they start trading insults immediately. Like he calls him bald and...
Yeah. The professor has a clap back. He says something about minimum wage, and the audience titters. We loved to make fun of people for making minimum wage in the 90s. And so,
but the class politics that are at play in this exchange, it was very cringy to watch. I was like,
yes. It was, but also Will's behavior the entire time. I'm like, even if this is another student, this is wildly inappropriate. You're going to get fired. Yeah. You cannot act like this.
He's a bully.
Just be on the... Yeah, he really is. Yeah. And of course, just like with Zack, I was like, this guy's clearly a teacher. I've seen TV shows before.
Well, here's the thing.
Calm down, both of you.
Exactly.
Professor Lasky, we've established, was a dreamboat. He should have... Zack should have known that he was older. This guy is... Like, he is very bald. Like, he looks like he took a razor to the top of his own head. Like, he's got this very unflattering haircut that seems designed to accentuate his male pattern baldness.
Well, and it's in this time, right, where, like, people who have this hair pattern, like my lovely partner sitting across from me, shave their head.
Yeah. Or look, I'm not saying, grow it out if you want to. My point just is that this casting is such that this is not a guy who is going to come across as a student. This is a guy who we can tell is in his 30s or older because of the weird way he's presenting himself.
And I think that was like, they weren't trying to act like he was a student. Will was just being a dick to everybody because he was focused on hitting on women and this guy was getting in his way. And then the guy didn't take the hint when he tried to blow him off. He was like, okay, but, I kind of need them by Friday, can you make that happen? And he was, and then Will was even more rude. And it was like, just like you're saying, he's going to get fired. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. In Will's defense, I'm not crazy about defending him, but I will, in that he does work at the bookstore. He sees a lot of non-trads. Like, I will defend him in that there's plenty of non-traditional students that go to college, and he probably sees people that are pushing middle age every now and then.
That's fair.
But still, stop giving them a hard time.
Yeah, maybe he
stop
thought it was
giving
like a
anyone
grad
a hard
student or
time for
something.
requesting books.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of how the episode gets set up, and he pisses off this guy sort of immediately. They trade insults back and forth. The guy goes on his way.
Yeah, and so this professor has basically the same move as Lasky. It's not quite like I'm in disguise among the students, but there is that moment of sort of like popping up to the front of the room and being like, hey, everybody, surprise, I'm your teacher. And we get the similar sort of like, well, all is lost because I've already alienated the teacher by, trading barbs with him in my job. Yeah. And B, he's going to learn about the Widowmaker, right? And we get this very bizarre, like something that would be out of Saved by the Bell, not Fresh Prince, this black and white fantasy scene about his execution because of the Widowmaker.
Right, because this class is the Widowmaker? Is that what it is?
One of his tests is called the Widowmaker.
Okay.
It was a very weird tonal thing for this show. Like, they don't normally do... it's fantasy scenes.
I was wondering that.
I mean, look, I wouldn't say that this has the most consistent mise en scène, but these black and white dream sequences was not normally part of it. But that's enough to convince Will, I need to drop the class, right? I don't want to do this anymore. And he goes not to the professor, but to his guidance counselor, Terry Kaiser. This is the staff person. I feel like this was a recurring guy that they brought back a few times in The Fresh Prince.
I hope so. I will watch all the episodes with him in them. I mean, he was such a breath of fresh air. I didn't really mind. I didn't mind this episode I'm going to put it slightly above Saved by the Bell, but I didn't mind it. But boy, when Weekend at Bernie's himself shows up, I sat up in my seat. I was like, all right, let's go. And I really enjoyed everything he was doing.
Bernie's second appearance on the podcast. He was the criminal in the Pee Wee Herman 227 episode. Yeah. So he was the criminal. He was the guy who was robbing the store in the Pee Wee Herman episode of 227.
Yeah. Love that guy. He's also awesome. In Friday the 13th. Part 7, The New Blood. He is just all over the 80s and 90s. So yeah, he's going to tell Will, like, what you need to get the professor's permission or something.
Yeah, you have to get his signature. And he's like, oh man, the guy's never going to let me do that. He's not going to let me drop the class. I'm sorry. That guy doesn't want you in his class. He will happily sign that form. What is he thinking?
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking. He doesn't want to waste his time torturing you.
Yeah.
And again, just like Zach Morris, all you're doing is interrupting and causing a ruckus throughout class.
Oh, and that was it at the beginning of that scene when before he realized that the professor was the professor and he thought it was just this guy that he'd been given a hard time to at the bookstore. He was like, "You're about to see a world-class class clown in action. Sit down. I'm gonna give this professor a hard time." And he's like, "Oh yeah, really? What's that gonna be? What do you like to do?"
Yeah. I'm just going to say, if you're describing yourself as the class clown, I think you're not a good class clown, right? Like, especially in college. Like, it's just, this whole thing, this sort of self-conscious.
If that's how you're leading your college career, like the first class you got, that's what you're coming in with.
Why are you here?
Yes, this is my brand. I'm the class clown.
Go away.
Get ready, everybody. Super lame. I also noticed, this is part of why I say this professor is one of the worst dressed education professionals, because then on day 2 he's not wearing the college t-shirt anymore. It's head to toe denim, right? He's got the full Canadian tuxedo, and Will approaches him about dropping the class. He says, fine, you can drop it, no problem, get out of here. But here's the thing, everybody. Will did not realize that this guy had a Jack Nicholson impression up his sleeve, right? Because that changes everything. The way Will stops dead in his tracks, as though this guy just said, like, the meaning of life or something. Yeah. It is hilarious.
And he does the you can't handle the truth, about Western philosophy. And so Will stops dead in his tracks and is like, oh, maybe I don't want to leave the class because the professor's really funny. He does impressions. And so then he's standing by the door, kind of like staring back in. And this janitor guy is like standing kind of behind him. And he shakes his head and he's like, best class I ever dropped.
This is the most 90s thing. This Robin Williams stream of consciousness impressions thing. They're like, somebody said truth? Well, then I'm going to be Jack Nicholson from A Few Good Men, but then I'm going to transition to being John Wayne and this guy and that guy. And just the way Will, the hardened young man that he is just like, oh my God, I love you.
Yeah. All I ever wanted was a teacher who would do impressions.
Any thoughts, Doug? Is this a technique you employ?
No. This is like
shit.
It's the equivalent of just like jingling keys in front of a child to just like get their attention. I had no respect for either of them. The impression isn't that good, and the fact that Will Smith is just blown away by this, I couldn't believe it. One thing I will say, this professor looked familiar to me, and like most people, I just end up scrolling my phone all day long when I can't sleep or whatever. This guy's on social media and he does impressions and they're pretty great. And he like teaches you how to do the impression. And one time I just sat and I watched reel after reel of this guy for like an hour.
Amazing.
It was pretty good.
It's funny because like we're saying in this Fresh Prince episode, I don't think his impressions are really that impressive, but I'm starting to realize like this this is why they cast him. Like, they worked backwards from like, we'll deal with your weird hairline. We need to find somebody, like, we need to find the Robin Williams that we can afford for this Fresh Prince thing. And they got it in their head for whatever reason. This is the guy. And I feel like they almost want him to be like a Professor Lasky type. Like, I think they would like him to be more of a youngish type that maybe Will thought he was, you know, a grad student or a fellow student. And they're just like, well, this guy's comedy chops are just so irreplaceable that, like, we just got to deal with the funky hair.
Do you think that they had Terry Kaiser lined up for this, and he was like, I can't do I'm sorry, I don't know who told you I could do impressions, but I know.
I was thinking of it from the opposite way, where I'm like, if I'm Terry Kaiser, I'm going like, why can't I be the funny teacher? Why do I have to be the guidance counselor that just has one scene? Well, I can do Jack Nicholson. I don't know. Maybe he was dodging a bullet. Maybe they knew the guidance counselor is going to come back and the teacher is just a one-off. I don't know, but it's weird. What happens here, this sort of like, it's not exactly a gift of the Magi situation, but it's a sort of ironic ending where at first he's not going to let Will come back to the course, right?
Right. Somebody's already taken his spot and there's no more seats available.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. It ends up with the professor will let him take the class, but he won't get college credit for it.
Right. Yeah. He basically says, look, your seat's already been taken, but I'll do you this solid.
Yeah. What he does do, though, is he delivers this in the form of a Godfather impression, because he has to make him an offer that he can't refuse or something.
It's like the fourth impression that he's done.
It's just so
like
funny,
he
though.
goes from one to another.
But so, yes, via his Godfather impression, that's the deal he makes. And so, yeah, we've got like, Will is fully won over, right? We don't have any address to the camera or anything.
Yeah.
No.
So we've got 3 wacky professors and a Wolverine. Overall thoughts. Doug, you're the one with the real expertise here. So what do we think of all of this, the college in the world of sitcoms?
They were real hit or miss episodes. I mean, I enjoy the idea. And just as a kid, like, I could see myself maybe seeing, you know, the Fresh Prince one and being like, wow, that would be really cool. Like, I would love to have a teacher who would connect and reach out with me and try and teach me something that I don't know and be more of a mentor to me. Like, that whole idea sounds exciting. I don't know, the Wolverine one, that was terrible. We shouldn't have done it. That was my mistake.
I loved that show. I loved that. You know what I mean? I loved the Hogan family.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, you know, we see this a lot. Like, sometimes when we find the episodes that really kind of fit a trope, then they're not the greatest episodes. But same thing is true about Fresh Prince. Like, if we were looking at the, obviously the new class, Saved by the Bell new class, is never going to try to like be something more
college years.
Oh, I keep doing that. I keep saying the new class.
Not the new class.
That's the new
different.
one.
That's the one with Scott.
My bad. But yeah, Saved by the Bell, the college years, it was never going to be anything like, that, you know, we're really going to learn something from, or it's kids TV. So that's okay. But Fresh Prince, it can do that, and it does that in other episodes. And I think part of it is that, like, this trope, just as we're seeing, doesn't make for the greatest. It makes for more of like okay, it's not the premiere.
I feel like that's letting them off a little easy, because if you're a sitcom and the assignment is give us an interesting college professor character, you know, the kids are going to college, we need an interesting college character. You should come up with something good. You know,
I mean, they did in the new. They got a hot guy and they got a guy with impressions.
Well, okay, so that's what I'll say in terms of my feelings here. In a sense, like, Family Ties is the best one for me because it's the best show, and so like anytime we're watching Michael J. Fox and we're watching Alex P. Keaton learn his lessons and everything, like, it's always great. But, you know, it wasn't the best usage of him just because of the reasons I said. Like, he was just so flailing that, I don't know, there's other times where I think it's better when you're seeing him like overcome prejudices or something that are like, just at least to me, made more sense than him just like turning into a total moron the second he walked through the door.
See, and I don't know, I didn't see it that way. I didn't see it as like, this wasn't Alex. I saw it as like, he has always been overly confident. He's in a new environment and he's trying to use his bag of tricks. And it not working is what threw him. Not that he was like just trying to be a totally different guy and stupid.
Right. Yeah. It's not him being too smart. You know, that's not the conflict. I feel like in other episodes, probably, again, didn't really watch the show, there were probably times where that's the issue, is that he's too bright. He's outshining his peers. Yeah. He's overthinking things. And in here, it was totally different. Like, he's on the defensive. He's trying to figure this out through the entire episode. And I kind of enjoyed that. I think it gives the character a little more depth. If the character's not just, you know, if it's not Zach Morris, if it's not just Zach Morris being Zach Morris again, I kind of appreciated that.
Yeah, and I think with Alex P. Keaton, right, in other episodes, when he is learning lessons similarly to the way he's learning a lesson here, he usually, it's like under duress. Like, he's learning a lesson when he doesn't want to. He thinks it's the other person's fault. He thinks he knows better. He thinks he knows more. And in this situation, he doesn't think he knows more. He like implicitly trusts and respects this professor. So he's like, for the first time ever, we're seeing Alex going, it's got to be me. Like, it's me, which is weird because like that's not something he normally does.
It's almost almost a fun inversion in that way, because it's like he's even stubborn and like self-aggrandizing about when he's like mad at himself, or like he's he's so determined on how much he likes this guy that like that becomes his undoing. Yeah, I guess it's not so bad. The Fresh Prince one aggravates me that, like, this is exactly the sort of straightforward, tropey story that they should be doing. Yeah. To me, the fact that the characterization of the professor is such a swing and a miss, in my opinion. The fact that Will Smith in 1993, like, he's one of the coolest guys in the world. Like, he should be a cool, funny guy. He's signing off on this characterization of what a professor that his character would think is really cool and funny and engaging. And the fact that the best that they could do was Jack Nicholson and Brando impressions, like, it just makes me go like, Will, you're phoning this in, like, not as the character or as an actor even. He should be the one going like, guys, this sucks. This isn't funny. You know, like, this is dumb. Like, let's come up with something cooler and funnier.
Although I will say it doesn't take a lot to like win over young people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like you can make a dad joke and they're like, oh, gross.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's the characterization of it literally stopping him in his tracks as he's like marching out of the classroom.
He does impressions I do with my friends.
But yeah, so that's why for me, I feel like my MVP is Saved by the Bell, even though it's kind of dumb, because I love that Patrick Fabian character.
Of course your MVP is Saved by the Bell. You are such a whore for Saved by the Bell.
Look, the process of elimination, like, Family Ties is always good. That goes without saying.
So I'm not going to like it because it's always good. I'm going to be persnickety. I'm going to say.
That scraggly old guy just didn't get me going the way that Professor Lasky did.
Well, I mean, that tracks, you know.
Doug, thank you so much for doing this. Like I said before, your podcast, Good Time, Great Movies, one of the great movie talking about podcasts. Let's see, if this comes out in about a month, in like somewhere in June, do you guys have some sort of like, are you doing a theme month or anything like that?
We always try and do that. We always try and do themes, you know, whatever. I'm frantically trying to figure out what movie that came out would have to do with National Hot Dog Day and things like that. The answer is Hot Dog the movie. Okay. But this is basically our 10th year that we're doing now. So all the rules are gone, and we're just like, let's just pick movies we want to talk about. So we're just alternating. I'll pick one. Jamie will pick one. Also, we used to have a Patreon. We shut that down a little while back. It was just too much work. 2 episodes a month. I'm good with that. But in the off weeks this coming year, we are releasing all of our Patreon content. So you will get a new episode every single Friday for 52 weeks, starting at the end of May.
Wow.
So, yeah, check it out. Yeah, but I have a spreadsheet of what we're covering, but off the top, I have no idea what's happening a month from now. We did Bo Derek Sember, where all we did was watch Bo Derek movies. They're all atrocious. And the Tarzan movie that she's in may be the best, and that is a sack of shit. And it's probably the best movie.
What is that called?
Tarzan the Ape Man.
Oh, okay.
Oh, can I do one more quick plug? Because people might not know about this because it doesn't exist. Over the pandemic, I don't know how I tricked my wife into doing a podcast with me where we went through the entire Schitt's Creek series.
I remember seeing that on Facebook. I didn't listen to it because at that time I hadn't watched Schitt's Creek, but I remember that.
That's fine. It's called Shits and Giggles. We went through the whole thing, every episode. We ranked them. It's a definitive list, of course.
All right.
Nice.
There you have it. Shits and Giggles is the Schitt's Creek podcast. Good Times, Great Movies, the 80s movie podcast. Doug, thank you so much. This was a blast.
Oh.
Amy, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, checkmate, Jay. We're talking about chess. We're going to watch The Danny Thomas Show, Season 5, Episode 13, The Chess Game, Frasier, Season 3, Episode 18, Chess Pains, The Bernie Mac Show, Season 2, Episode 16, Chess Wars, and Odd Couple, the new one from 2015, Season 2, Episode 9, Chestnuts.
Yep, that's next week. And until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.